Before starting this course on career counseling, it is extremely important to understand why you should take your career choice seriously. In this video, we will help you understand the importance of making the right career choice for yourself. So, why is your career choice so important? It is important because it determines a lot of things in your life, including number 1, quality of life. Your career choice plays a huge role in deciding where you live, how flexible your life is, and the kinds of things you are able to do in your free time. Number 2, identity. Ask any elder person about their career and they will tell you about it as a part of their identity. They'll say something like, I am a journalist, instead of, I report news. Notice how everybody asks you, what do you want to be when you grow up? And not, what do you want to do when you grow up? This shows that your career choice shapes your identity. Number 3, impact. Every human life touches thousands of other lives in so many different ways. If you select any 60-year-old person who is about to retire, take a time machine, find him as an infant, throw that infant into trash, and then come back to the present day, you'll find that a countless number of things around you have changed. So whatever career you choose, the world will be affected by it. Anything that determines your quality of life, your identity, and the impact that you make should be taken very seriously. And that includes your career choice also. So we hope that this short video could help you understand the importance of making the right career choice. Having done that, we will now move forward to start our career counseling course. We are pretty excited and we hope you are too. So, let's begin. See you.
Good evening, guys. I hope everybody is doing well. Welcome to day 28 of Pro Bono's live podcast. Firstly, welcome to all the audience members and the viewers. Aditya, Mr. Sen, of course, most importantly, Ms. Rupinder Kaurji, thank you so much for being with us today. Welcome to our podcast. I hope you are doing well as well and your family. So guys, firstly, introduction दे देता हूँ मैं. Ms. Rupinder is an experienced founder with a demonstrated history of working in the international development sector. She's the founder director of She Codes Foundation, working to bridge the gender gap in technology. In January 2019, she was appointed as a teaching fellow at the LOA program at Harvard University, excuse me, where she directly mentored 26 students on their projects in Europe, Middle East, Asia, and Australia. On the same line, she has started the LAC program in India with Jindal University for leaders and civil society organizations working on social change. Ms. Rupinder has led multiple programs using the community organizing framework in India and has trained many young leaders in India and globally on social change. Ms. Rupinder is an Open Society Fellow on Rights and Governance. As OSIRG Fellow in 2013, she worked on the project of political empowerment of women in Poland, India, and Nepal. She is passionate about creating a just, equitable, humane society through capacity building of individuals at all levels of governance and society. Besides studying leadership, organizing, and action from Harvard University, she did specialization in non-profit leadership and management, civil society in commemorative perspectives from the O'Neill School of Public Policy, Indiana University, and a master's in degree in diplomacy, law, and business from the Jindal University. Yes. In January 2019, Ms. Rupinder was chosen as the president of the OSIRG Alumni Network Executive Committee. As the president of the ON, Ms. Rupinder envisions to build a network of the alumni to promote their work on the rights and governance issues. Well, कहाँ से शुरू करें? कहाँ से शुरू करें? मैं कहीं से पिक आउट नहीं करूँगा. फर्स्टली मैं बोलूँगा बस मिस रुपिंदर, थैंक यू सो मच फॉर बीइंग विद अस टुडे. वी रियली अप्रिशिएट यू टेकिंग टाइम टू स्पीक विद आवर ऑडियंस. सो फर्स्टली इफ़ यू कैन, जितना मैंने इंट्रोड्यूस कर दिया है, बिसाइड्स दैट जो कुछ भी बचा है, इफ़ यू कैन इंट्रोड्यूस योर सेल्फ एंड एड्रेस योर ऑडियंस इन योर ओन वर्ड्स. थैंक यू.
Thank you so much. Thanks to you and thanks to Pro Banu for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to share my experience and encourage the next generation who want to work on social change and social entrepreneurship and make a difference to everybody's life, and especially in the times we are at right now. So I would like to go back to right now the passion I have for social change and entrepreneurship, how it developed. So as a child, when I was growing up, I always had this kind of a thing that maybe I want to do something for the society, but it wasn't very clear. So like I was just telling someone, when I was in school, I thought, because I had commerce as subjects, somebody guided me that time that, you take commerce, you do a BCom, then you do an MBA, and that's the future, that's the options right now. And I took that advice and I picked up commerce subjects. And then that time I used to think, okay, MBA, CA, CS, these are the options I can do. But when I was doing my graduation, I still had commerce as subjects. I started studying liberal arts. I started studying humanities also, because those are the issues I got interested in, seeing the condition, because especially born and brought up in a patriarchal society, those were the issues which used to really pinch me. And then I thought, okay, maybe something in the development sector I would like to do. But after my graduation, the circumstances changed a little bit, and I joined my father's business. And that is contrary to what I do right now. It is a jewelry business, retail and sale of gold, diamond, and silver jewelry ornaments. And I was doing very well. In fact, I used to love selling, marketing, and stuff. But there was one part of it also within that experience which used to always make me think that what am I doing, am I making any difference to the society? Because you see, when a business like this, especially in India, the wedding culture is such that the wedding jewelry is not considered so much as a gift but as a burden. So when people used to come and buy, the wedding jewelry, and the kind of questions they used to have, that used to really make me think that how are we going to change this? And incident happened that somebody asked a similar question from me also, like when my parents were looking for a match for me. Somebody asked my father, how much are you willing to spend on a wedding? And that was something which actually made me think that maybe I was making or doing something individually, but I wasn't making any difference to the society. And that is when I actually left the business and I started pursuing a master's in public policy and international development. And I went on to Jindal to do my master's there. And from there, life took a different turn. I was selected as one of the fellows for Open Society Foundation. The very first fellowship they started globally for rights and governance for public policy students across the globe. Where we would be working on a project of our own choice across the globe. And there were other fellows from Harvard, Cambridge, Oxford, so on and so forth. And we were mentored for 15 days on rights and governance issues in Central Europe. And then we went on to pursue our research and work in other parts of the world. And I worked in Poland specifically on political empowerment of women there. And so I worked on that project, and then I came back to India. I did a comparative study between the capacity building measures of political empowerment of women in both the countries. And I started working with the Polish embassy also in New Delhi as a public diplomacy officer, where we were working on, engaging civil society organizations in education, culture, and art. And so after having worked for a year, I thought again, maybe I love challenges. And I thought this wasn't something really, engaging the grassroots communities so much. And then I came back to Uttarakhand, and I started working with the grassroots communities here on gender, especially on empowerment of women issues. And we started working with Girl Child in School on girls' education, on skill development, and also on my forte area, the political empowerment of women. And since I was working here in 2017 is when I did the Harvard Executive Education Program on leadership, organizing, and action. And I learned, skills on how to build leadership for social change and action, how to build social leadership. Because what happens in India is when we're doing an MBA or any other kind of program, we taught leadership for running corporates, maybe, and other stuff. But how do you actually build leadership for social change, or social leadership as we call it now? So that's what I learned in that program. And when I came back and I implemented it in my program with, the women here, the challenge which we used to have before, having incorporated the learnings or the skills I learned in that program on relationship building, on, asking people for a commitment, especially on public narrative, the storytelling. How do you build value into your story? How do you connect people? So all those, when I actually learned and I worked with the communities here and encouraged them to use it, we actually saw a drastic change. There were women leaders who started participating. And, when we first held a training program for these women, so we were anticipating 55 leaders to attend that. And before that, this had not happened that women on their own would come. There was always an incentive by the state government or by the local government given to them. And of course, we say, the patriarchal structure, it encourages the men folk to come and do the training and then implement whatever the learnings. So women were not actually coming out. But when we actually used these techniques, we saw the leadership building. And that's when it gave me, this idea that we need to really encourage more people. And even if I was working alone, on all these projects, I might not be able to do or make a lot of difference. So that's when I started teaching the same program, which I learned at Harvard with the Jindal University, to build social leadership with young leaders and grassroots organization leaders in India. And I'm really happy that we've already run 3 batches of that program, and they're almost like 50 to 55, grassroots leaders who worked on, the skills, and they are actually making a lot of difference at the ground. And taking this only is something like, the public policy challenges, that how do we solve that, is something which encouraged me to start another initiative with the Delhi government. So we've always seen that, in schools, especially in the government schools, the dropout ratio of girls is very high after, say, 10 or 11 years of age, because parents actually don't see value in the education being given. So that actually made me think that, what should be done, that we can encourage girls to stay in school as well as learn something which can actually lead to skill development. And that's when we started She Codes Foundation, and we are actually teaching computer coding education to the girl child in the government schools from the age group of 11 to 17 years, to impart them skills and also knowledge, so as to, make them ready for technical education, so that they can pursue technical education, and it helps in reducing the gender gap in technology. So that's about my journey.
Actually, I had a couple of questions, but then you covered them in your journey. So कुछ नया पूछता हूँ मैं. Yeah. So let's just get right into the topic. Like you said, you conduct these programs. Women empowerment के लिए, to train them in necessary skills to build them up by themselves. So we take pride in how many girls are graduating from college in India. It's growing at an exponential rate. We take pride in that. But then grassroots level पे ये प्रॉब्लम अभी भी है, वेयर लड़कियों को स्कूल तक जाने की मौका नहीं मिल रही है. उनके घर पे रोका जाता है फॉर वॉट एवर रीज़न. अभी रीज़न तो लिस्ट आउट करने में उसमें जाएंगे नहीं. लेकिन लाइक यू एज व्हेन यू टेक दिस इनिशिएटिव, तो आप हाउ डू यू प्रेजेंट दिस पर्टिकुलर प्रोग्राम, और हाउ डू यू टैकल द माइंडसेट फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल. आई गेस प्रोग्राम इम्प्लीमेंट करने के लिए हाउ डू यू गेट दिस से ओके दिस इज अ प्रोग्राम, आपके बच्चों को विल एम्पावर देम. तो वो हाउ डू यू ब्रेक दैट टबू माइंडसेट.
So that's a very important point you've asked. And so one of the important things is, as a leader, I should be able to, project my values, that what am I, bringing. So if, like I shared in my story, that, the moment for me was that even though I was so empowered, I was running a business, but the same question, if that came to me, that how much my parents will be willing to spend on my wedding, that made me actually think. So the second thing, like the thing which I tell people is that, if girls like me who can work here, and then when we encourage your daughters to come and join such program, especially like we encourage them कि अगर आप सोचते हैं कि सिर्फ स्कूल से निकाल लेंगे और ये घर का काम करेंगे, यू नॉट बिल्डिंग वैल्यू इनटू देम. बिकॉज माइंडसेट क्या है, व्हेन आई वाज डूइंग दीज प्रोग्राम्स इन द स्कूल्स, जेंडर सेंसिटाइजेशन का एक प्रोग्राम करते हैं, तो उसमें क्या है, वी आस्क गर्ल्स की मतलब वैल्यू क्रिएशन कैसे है, बिकॉज गर्ल्स को रिस्पेक्ट नहीं किया जाता है, बिकॉज इकोनॉमिक वैल्यू नहीं जनरेट कर रही हैं गर्ल्स, whereas boys are seen as generating economic values. So then we encourage the parents कि if you actually let them get education, but not by education I don't mean कि सिर्फ school education है, some skills they should actually get, because problem वहीं पे ही है कि if the the girl child is not getting some skills, the education is getting wasted, because ultimately these parents will not be really encouraged to invest in her in some other skill. So what happens is she drops out, even if she is a meritorious student. But if she has a brother who is equally meritorious, he will be given an opportunity and not her. So we encourage that, okay, we are providing the platform, we are giving the skills. The only thing you have to do is let her join, and if she's capable, she will be able to do something and earn for herself. And the problem of, say, domestic violence, the problem of, say, dowry, the problem of female infanticide, that you can actually help curtail. And I think parents do understand that part a bit, especially the mothers, because they have undergone that themselves and they don't want to see their daughters undergoing that. So it's like building relationship is little difficult in the beginning, but then building it through your story is something which we actually do, and we encourage the communities also to do it.
Before we go on to Mr. Sen or the audience question, just one more question मेरे end पे. I get the privilege क्योंकि मैं conduct कर रहा हूँ. I'll just take that. I'll abuse that privilege. No problem. So you were saying about how you need to incorporate stories. कि कैसे आप एक story को you can make it impactful to for whatever it is you're doing. And yesterday we were having this conversation, Aditya, Mr. Sen and I, we were having this conversation as in कैसे आपका story, your life story or whatever instances you may have, how stories last in future, or how stories are what makes a history. So how do you, आप कैसे stories को use करते हो to run your program or run these empowerment programs?
So basically, stories are a source of building relationship. Like we connect that why am I doing this, and then we ask others also what are they actually wanting from say life. And then I think when you have something common as social change, women empowerment or leadership, that's when you actually connect very fast. But apart from that, a lot of people say if they're working on social entrepreneurship or social leadership, they connect with you with this whole idea because they see that if you are able to actually connect through your story to so many others, they can also learn and connect. One of the things stories we connect is we actually talk about the challenges we've had in our life, how we overcame that challenge, and then what we are doing presently. So that gives a hope to people, that gives a moral value to the people, that if someone is doing this, they can also do. Like in the beginning I said I was completely doing a different thing, and right now what I'm doing is completely different. And I think a lot of encouragement came from watching people who were doing such kind of work. And especially after having met Professor Marshall Gans during my Harvard program, is how he actually was making a lot of difference with people by mentoring them on social change, and how public narrative. So if you see all our leaders, everyone uses stories. Mr. Modi uses it all the time to connect to audience. That is why we're following the lockdown, because that's how he connects. So I think stories actually make you connect and they make you follow. I hope I've answered the question. If not, you can ask a further question.
No, no, absolutely. It was answered clearly and clearly so. मेरा कोटा पूरा हो गया आज का. If something comes up, I'll break down in middle. But firstly, audience, everyone, Pushkar Das, Krishna, Anita ji, Shikha ji, and Achintya, everybody, thank you for your comments and welcome as well. All of them are regulars, so thank you for coming back. Yeah, Achintya says very helpful. Thanks Pro Bono for organizing such sessions. You're welcome and thank you so much for being with us. For the next segment, I'll hand over to Mr. Sen. Over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Namaskar. Welcome to the show. Welcome, Rupinder, to the show. And a big shout out to all the people who are out there, especially to Anita ji and Krishna. I like that name, actually. And Pushkar Das, who have been with us every single day. And if I miss some names, please forgive me. So, Rupinder, you had a very interesting narrative that you shared with us and with the audience. So can you tell us a little bit more about what sort of programs do you run with the Jindal Foundation of the education part of it? And what sort of change have you seen in your students who are going through that program?
Okay, so the program is called Leadership, Action and Change. And we actually are building leadership in, grassroots organization leaders. Why I say grassroots organization leaders is because, people like me or anyone who's sitting in Delhi in international organizations or any other organization has already had capacity to go at some of the Ivy League schools or colleges and has attained some kind of knowledge, but it's not available for people who are actually working in India at the grassroots. So I'll just go back to my learnings, that when I was working in Uttarakhand in the social space, what I observed was that whatever, like in the social development space we are doing, there is a service module we follow, that you say you do this change will happen. Or there is advocacy model, we say do this will happen. But there is not a people powered change which actually happens, that you go to people, you ask them what is their problem, and then you bring solutions from the people, you use their resources, and then you build their power, and then they actually drive the change. So that is the model we actually teach in this program. And the skills associated are, I'll like to elaborate if you have any other questions.
That's brilliant. So basically, what you're saying is, uh, previously it was a what oriented. That means what you do, what you do, what you do is going to make a change. And what you have brought about, if I understand you correctly, is how you want to do that. What are the resources that you can indigenously use, resources which are residing within that individual in doing the what.
Exactly.
And I think that's exactly what you're trying to say.
Exactly. So one example I'll just give you is we have a student from our last batch. He was working with the tribal community in Chhattisgarh in the Bastar district, and how he actually used, the people actually were not having any source of livelihood, but they had, this farming of custard apple, but the community was not organizing itself. So he used the model that what is the problem? The problem was unemployment, the problem was poverty. And then he encouraged them using his own story, using, the resources of relationship building and skills like that. And then he got the community together and they actually built a social enterprise. And then he taught them, marketing skills. And now what they're doing is they're making pulp from, the custard apple and the local indigenous fruits, and they are actually selling it in markets. So that's how we are encouraging change. And it's not just social enterprises, but say if you're working on, say, gender issues, gender violence, or say education also, the example which I gave, of mobilizing girl child for education, using technology for education. Because I'm someone who's really very, fond of technology, and also I would like to also ask people that technology is the next thing, and when you intertwine technology with public policy, that's where the solutions are going to lie for tomorrow. So we're trying to actually blend all this, the technology, the leadership part, and people power change.
That's excellent. And what I do understand from what you said is you are actually, your program is working on creating leaders of change and social change at that. So you're going to have a social change which is resulting into a sustainable development. Exactly. Where the girl child and the woman can actually sustain herself and her family through that whole process of the entrepreneur role that she's going to take.
Exactly.
Now that's excellent. I'm going to come to a question over here, which is, there is something that's prevalent not only in India definitely, and abroad as well, across many other countries, where there is a reticence for entrepreneurs to talk about money, commerce, and legal aspects. How does your program handle that part of things? When I talk about money, so you are actually empowering them, giving them the tools and techniques to do something. Now, when they come up with the produce, and you talked about the fruit and the apples, all the thing, how there is, I've noticed a reticence in putting a price to it and asking the real value of it from the customer, whoever's going to buy it. And if that person is another organization with deep pockets and a lot of power, there is a tendency of the small social entrepreneurs, or any other entrepreneur for that matter, to shy away and give in. I'm sure you must have had this sort of an experience in your journey while you were doing the program. So if you could share as to how you addressed this and how you got the people to actually be empowered to make and take a stand and say, no, this is the value I bring, and this is the value I command, and I want this as a fair value for my produce.
Yeah, so I'll just give you a, analogy that when I run this program, there is not much of resources in terms of the money I generate from this program. There is very small amount of fees, and I put in a lot of effort in facilitating the sessions, and and the NGO work also I am doing. I do not draw out a
Okay.
salary or something.
Sorry
So
to interrupt you.
similarly, when we
I
are
was talking
doing
about
this,
your students.
yeah, so that's what I'm coming to. So similarly, we encourage the students to again go back to using their story, that if the corporation or if people pay a little more, it's not going to go into profit making venture markets, but it's going to eliminate, say, poverty in the houses, or raise the capital, or provide for education. So building on the resources, or maybe they actually try using those stories. And then another thing which we do with the program is relationship building, that if I'm able to build a relationship with you, Sain, and if I'm able to convince that, see, our produce or whatever profit we are generating or whatever price you give us is going to eventually lead to, say, empowerment of these girls in, say, education, then they're actually going to bring this back into the economy, into the development, and maybe tomorrow, the pricing will come down, or you can have a better price. But for now, let's sustain this. So maybe encouraging them to build such kind of relationship and bring in such kind of a mindset. And in my experience, it has worked a lot, because everybody wants to contribute to change and development, but sometimes it becomes difficult also. But yeah, so it will be a process that you keep on building that, and you use relationships. I mean, I hope I have answered that.
Fair enough. That's good. And now, that brings me to a slightly different sort of a topic, which is if you notice, and if you notice the world over, gender diversity and inclusion is by and large absent, barring a few places and a few organizations. But by and large, it is absent, whether it be in the government, whether it be in politics, whether it be in the large corporations. And I know some figures, like, for example, Microsoft has a gender diversity of 14%, which is, okay, let's not talk about what it is. But now these are people, women who are empowered, highly educated. They've gone to Harvard like yourself, they've gone to Yale, they've gone to MIT. But why is it that still we do not have an inclusion and equality in diversity across the world? India is pretty back, pretty much down the scale. I have worked in organizations where there were 70% women. I'll come to that later. But why is it that it is down everywhere and India is definitely lagging behind?
Because
So
men are
why,
holding,
and what would you do? What would you do to sort of balance that equation?
because men are holding all the power right now. The countries which are headed by women are doing better in corona situation.
Which I agree with you. Of the 5 countries which are doing much better than the rest, 4 of them are women led.
Yeah. So I'll just that's really an important point and issue you've raised. So one of the important things going back to India is also, see, we always have this economic value associated with the gender. So men, they are seen as, especially in India, as someone who will be carrying the family's name. They are the ones, even if there is a business, they will be carrying business. So that's why in India, not much, especially right now also in rural India, is invested in the girl child. Whereas, of course, in our cities and in the middle class or upper middle class, of course, women do get good education, and then they go on to head enterprises also. But still, what is happening at the grassroots or at the rural level is that the value which women have, or women are not seen as equally competent to men. Globally, it's not still seen. So especially if you see the political heads, also the figures, that in India, more than 1 million women are elected at the grassroots levels in India as panchayats or as ward members, but they do not participate in the decision making process. Why? Because they are not seen as competent. Of course, there are other challenges of patriarchy, illiteracy, and all that. So because we are not actually thinking of empowering them, or providing them good education. So what I feel is, mm, this was there in my mind also to talk about, that these are public policy issues which we need to solve. So, through instruments of technology, so through instrument of, social change. So, encouraging people to pursue, studies in public policy, because we're actually talking here a lot about career counseling. So I really wanted to encourage this part also. So, encouraging, social entrepreneurship, that even if you start enterprises, they have social value at the end. They are profit making organizations, but they have social value. That you start an enterprise which has women force as 50% workforce, that means you're empowering those 50 families. That means you're empowering those 50 girls who will get education. And especially, how do you actually develop such public policy solution? Say, I'll just give you a very small example. Uber, we all of us use. So Uber is a public policy solution, intertwined with technology, that if there are so many people and there are so many vehicles needed. So similarly, how do you actually solve this problem of gender diversity is where, public policy comes in. That's where we need to invest a lot in studying public policy. In India, we've not had courses in public policy before. It's a trend which has just started right now. Outside also, all the people who study public policy are not much, especially, a lot of people want to go into corporate jobs because those are the jobs which pay a lot and stuff like that. But I think if we really want to see this kind of diversity or change, this is the line we really need to encourage, that, we encourage people to opt for such careers.
Now, there is an exception to the rule.
Okay.
Like all rules, there's an exception. Healthcare, caregivers. There is a disproportionate diversity balance where women caregivers are much higher than the male caregivers. And this is especially true for specialized or super specialized specialties, where we have noticed that women actually go and pursue that super specialty, men do not. And that creates a different set of a problem. And it's a fact, because I have worked in the healthcare sector and I know that. There are some diseases which, there are many things that has to be balanced out. But predominantly the women, they are more in employment in the health caregiving industry. So how come it is that way? The other one is, of course, in teaching, but that's at a primary school level and maybe at a secondary school level where women are employed. And there is a tendency for people, for women, to opt for a teaching job. And that I find very strange, actually, because on one hand, you have highly educated super specialist doctors, and they are like right there on the top. They're not only competing with the male, they're leaving the male behind. And on the other hand, you have the same set of genes.
So
and they're stuck to teaching.
I would say you're underestimating your teachers. If you've not had the opportunity to have good teachers, then you wouldn't be what you are right now. And I give all the credit to my teachers for, taking up that job, taking up that profession and providing, whatever knowledge they had to us so that we could build a better society and a better nation. So that I would give it to them. The reason I think teaching a lot of females take up also, or say if I have also taken is, even though I run an organization, is you want to build on, or you want to spread the knowledge which you have. Like right now, I just said that if I am teaching this program, I am actually mentoring, 25 social enterprises or social change leaders for tomorrow. So I'm inculcating those values in them, which are actually going to really produce a result later. So that is the mindset I think the teachers have. And I think the same mindset, I've not had the opportunity to ask a lot of, doctors, why do they, why so many women are doctors. But it's again the caregiving attitude of women, which comes rather than, that's why we don't have so many women in, politics, because men take control there, then they don't let women. I don't want to politicize this, but I'm just bringing humor
No,
to.
but that's a very interesting point. It's a political point, or politicizing it. But then if you look at the 4 out of the 5 countries which have done remarkably well in combating coronavirus, 4 of them are led by women: New Zealand,
Exactly.
Taiwan, Iceland, Germany. The 5th one being South Korea. And I think that inherent caregiving, and that's, the health providers, the inherent caring as a mother, which is inherent to a woman, comes in place over here, because a mother is first and foremost protective of her children.
Exactly.
And I think the leaders can provide that sort of a social protection. I'm not talking about blazing guns and all that sort of things. No, I'm talking about that social protection. So now my last question to you before someone kills me, that is, last question to you is, in politics, and you've worked a lot on this in Nepal and India and in Central Asia, in Poland. What is it that holds women back?
So actually, according to the research I did, and especially in these patriarchal societies, I did the research. Um, so because women are actually engaged in the household work, so and in raising the children. So what happens if they get into politics, and that kind of burden actually increases on them. The other reason is that we do not actually, what happens is, from the beginning, maybe men are trained also, some do get training, and they join politics at a very early age also. Women are not encouraged to enter politics. Like you said, they'll enter professions like teaching or be a doctor, but not a politician, because that impinges on their family life. That's why, whenever there is a lady IPS officer, I mean, the kind of grill she goes through is different from what a male IPS officer goes, because this I'm saying because of the experience I've seen with my friends happening. So I'm just giving you an example that one thing is this. Second thing is, there is not enough of training also, which we think we can give to these women to be political leaders, or and then the support, say financial support to contest the elections. The third is the mindset that can women be good leaders, because she has to look after her household work. Will she be able to devote work to policy, to decision making? So all those stereotypes actually hold us back. But when people will start seeing examples of, say, 4 women leaders who are doing incredibly well, I think that's when the stereotypes will break. And one example I just want to bring in here, it comes from my favorite politician, that the late external affairs minister, Sushma Swaraji. When she actually was in the ministry, as external affairs minister also, how she responded to situations. But apart from that, she'd actually, the tuberculosis program, she was the one to have signed that, and it became part of the national program in India, because a moment came in her life when she saw 2 girls, and they were suffering from that. And she thought that this has to pass. And I think it goes back to the same question of women being care leaders actually drives their notion to adopt such policies and makes them better leaders, I will say. But then there is this whole stereotype or, so many notions we have around if women will be able to perform as leaders. So I think that needs to go. And I think that will go with time when we encourage more women to join. So, I mean, that's something we are encouraging. So there is this one program, a friend of mine, she runs, it's called Indian School of Democracy, where they're encouraging women leaders to participate and train them actually in India to join politics. So I think in next few years, we'll have more Indian women leaders also.
Excellent. That's a brilliant thing and a lovely note to hand over to. I think let's hand it over to Aditya so he can read out the audience comments and take on from here.
I'm finally obsolete, guys. अभी मेरा काम खत्म.
हाँ होगा होगा बाद में होगा अभी नहीं. आदित्य मेरे को मारेगा नहीं तो फिर.
Seriously, हो गया है.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sen.
Lighter note.
But it was a great 45 minutes, I think, with Rupinder, and we were discussing so many aspects of women empowerment, and I think we'll come back to that. First, let me read some audience comments. Yeah. So I'm just loading audience comments. Yeah. We have a few audience comments here. So Mrs. Kumkum Sen says, nice session, relevant topic. Mr. Satya Mitra says, great session. And now we have a question. Mr. Ranindram Datta asks, do you hold this program for corporates? The program that I think Rupinder just discussed about. And if so, the typical challenge for HR is quantifying benefits. How do you do that to convince senior stakeholders about the program?
So we've not done this for corporates because there's so many programs on leadership development per se, which the corporates use. But how do you quantify is that when you will actually, build relationship and bring in more community, and if you're doing some events, say, and we have a module on how do you ask people to commit. So I think that is the time you can actually see that the kind of difference this program or, the skills which we teach is making to, the corporates. How do you actually, because if we say building relationship, that how do you convert those relationship into, numbers and stakes later? I think then you can quantify it.
So it's more of a mindset change, I think you're causing.
Yeah, it's a social behavioral change also. And plus it's built in this whole idea of, building relationship through values that, how do you connect with people? How do you communicate also? And especially, say, people who are working in the corporates also, in the CSR space also. How do they actually connect with others? I mean, we haven't started this with corporates, but this is what I'm envisaging will lead to.
Yeah, guys. So if you were catching me looking at my mobile in the middle, I was actually trying to share details of this program with you. So yeah, my WhatsApp did not open up on computer. So I'll do one thing. I'll share the details of the program in the comment section after this webinar ends. And if you're really interested, you can have a look at the comment section of this recorded webinar after the session ends, and you'll find that there. In case you don't find it, contact us over private message, and we'll be very happy to connect you with Rupinder.
Thank you so much, Aditya, for that.
Thank you, Rupinder. So we have a few more audience comments. Khushi Welfare says hello. Hi, Khushi. And it's a real nice suffix to your name you have. I think we should really focus on welfare of humanity. Chaudhary Akash Singh says great. Thank you, Akash. Krishna says proud of you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Sana. So Sana asks this question. Excellent. I'm an impact consultant using disruptive tech to drive deeper impact. What is the best route to get in touch with you?
Oh, so I think when Aditya shares that pamphlet, it has my number, no? Or Aditya, you can share my number, and if you have any questions, you can call me, and I would love to answer.
Sure. So Sana, I'll connect you with Rupinder, I'll do that via DM, direct message. Cool.
One thing, Aditya.
So,
Sana Hazari said she's an impact consultant using disruptive tech to drive deeper impact. Sanaji, if you could type in the comments exactly what you do. So we want to hear what you do and how you do it. Taki maybe we could read that out in the stream. That would be great. Okay, back to you, Aditya.
thank you so much for the addition, Saman. And so I'll like to take this conversation again back to the basics, where we started from. So you said when you were, obviously when you were pursuing your degree, you wanted to do something in social impact, but then you work with your family business, which, by the name of it sounds very, high paying and very like, a rich kind of a business. And then you shifted to social impact. So when that shift was getting made, so you said that I am feeling like I'm not making any social impact. So did you just shift to that on the basis of social impact? And if you did, what about money? So did not you think about money while making this career shift?
Yes. I first important thing I think was the value creation you yourself also want to do. At some point of time you realize that am I making any difference to the society, and the money part was something which I can sustain myself, not something I'm hoarding or a profit making enterprise, but something for me social capital is the capital I'm generating for me, and not assets or wealth right now. And I think in the time to come, if we all are, investing in, the social impact, like, through technology or anything, eventually we'll start, generating funds. So one of the myths actually is also there that the social sector में जो लोग होते हैं ना वो झूला पकड़ के चलने वाले होते हैं.
हाँ कुर्ता भी पहनते वो लोग.
कई लोग होते हैं. No, there are people who are working in the social sector, in development sector like me, who is, not a kind of person who carries the jhula. But, you will have to make some compromise because social sector in India right now does not pay that much. But there is I think, satisfaction which you get by the work you do. You are making a difference. When I meet these people, when things are improving at the ground, that's the benefit I'm reaping. And I think then it comes to the same thing sometimes, you generating so much of amount of money but you're not satisfied with life, because sometimes this whole question actually comes back to you: what is the purpose of my life? I think young age it drives you need to really generate a lot of money, but then after sometimes you do realize this: what is the purpose of my life? Am I doing something which is making sense, or tomorrow that people will recognize me by my work rather than the kind of money I have. So I think that's what makes a difference. That's made the difference to me.
So guys, that's a great insight to draw from her journey right there. I think it is the social impact that you make which should drive your career decision, and then maybe you can think about the external factors surrounding it, like your lifestyle or the practicality aspect or the money that you're getting. And it's very important to seek that satisfaction out of your career, because ultimately we forget money is a small part which earns you that satisfaction probably, and it's not the end in itself. So if you can gain satisfaction through the work that you're doing, that's I think the most important, and that is why I think Rupinder is able to do such great work.
Thank you. So I just wanted to add one thing. See, in the time to come in India, especially social development and social sector is going to be something huge. Especially, the public policy, work we take, now it's become essential part of our work, say health policies, they're driven by, public's concern. Say in the field of art also, now we have art policies. You know, how are we actually generating resources for the communities who are doing artwork? So I think with time, when we realize this and we encourage public policy professionals, um, and we encourage students to take up career in public policy, in technology, and intertwine it with public policy. So I think that's something which is going to make a difference, and that is not like it doesn't pay you; it pays you handsomely. So so my suggestion is that if you want to do something in social impact, social development, you should pursue careers in public policy. That actually pays you well also, and that actually makes an impact also. So I would really encourage that.
And what are the degrees that I can do after class 12th or maybe after my bachelor's to pursue public policy, Rupinder?
There are programs like the BA in BA economics if you do, and then you can do a master's in public policy or MPA, say in Harvard and all. Right now in India also, the Jindal University also has MPA. Then they have in international development, they have a BA in international development, then a master's in international development also, and diplomacy. And these are some of the programs you can actually do: a bachelor's and then a master's in public policy.
So guys, we have a lot of tangible advice also coming through. Careers in public policy are actually growing big, and the thing is that maybe 20, 30 years ago, it was not such a talked about career that it is now. So, if you're a parent, especially if you're a parent watching this, please do look it up, public policy. If you have any questions to ask, please do send us a message. But I think this sort of awareness is very important to create, because careers that were there 20, 30, 40 years ago, some of them have gone long ago, and some of them are getting introduced. And public policy, I'm not saying that would not have been there, but we are getting specialized programs in that, so it is really worth a shot.
Last thing to add, so
Sure.
you do get jobs as consultants, as public policy consultants with groups like the Boston Consulting Group, which works with Niti Aayog, the Atal Innovation Mission. And so, these are big names which are, and then the chief minister's fellows right now are public policy professionals. The district magistrate fellows are people who are doing public policy. So it is, getting into the deeper pockets in India, so as to improve, the social development space. So yeah.
Great. I would also have two final questions on women empowerment, because that has been pretty much the theme of today, like, women empowerment, careers for women. So, and I think it's a great theme to discuss about also, considering the lack of gender diversity in our, especially corporate ecosystem, which should be there. Have you heard about Jordan Peterson, Rupinder?
I can't
I'll tell you, there's this guy who basically, kind of beats a few myths. I'm not sure, how right he is. I'm not a student of psychology, but yes, some of the people really follow him. And so he says that in the Scandinavian countries, especially in Sweden, and I would want your take on it, that in Sweden, they have very free free human rights, and everyone is promoted, whether a man, whether a woman, to take up studies and study whatever they want to. And even there's a huge skew of women, and I think Mr. Sen and you were also discussing this. There's a huge skew of women towards the careers of public healthcare, towards becoming teachers, becoming nurses, and the usual women-centric careers that we know. And then there are less women in Sweden who are engineers, and the so-called men-centric careers which are considered in the society. So his point is that even if you give women free will, and even if you give men free will, the fabric of the society might pretty much remain the same. So he does not really support all these programs which, according to him, are trying to force feed women into coding or into pursuing careers in STEM. Now, what is your take on this?
Okay, so yeah, according to research, what has been shown is at the age of 10 or 11 years is the age when women, or say girls, they start dreading science and technology and engineering. So that is the right age when you encourage, because in our social fabric also we say that this is a man's job. Driving a car amazingly well, a man only must be driving, not a woman, because women can't be good drivers. Right? This is the notion. And then you say scientist also, any scientist you say is going to be a man. But the recent missions we've had in India, they have been women scientists. Especially the COVID test, kit that was made by a woman, and who later went on to deliver a baby also after making the kit. So it's the right encouragement which is given at the right age, which pushes you into that direction. So in STEM education and coding, what we are trying to do is, that's why for our program we have the age group from 11 to 18 years, because at 11 is the stigma associated with science and technology that we want to break, that girls can also do this. So, and I was very surprised when we started this program in the Delhi government schools in January, when we launched it with the Deputy CM, Mr. Sisodia. All these girls were so happy, and that they are going to be learning computers, because this was the moment for them, because they had not thought of it. Because we think, oh, why should we encourage a girl to learn computer? We should give this skill to the boys. So we are actually discouraging them. But once we encourage them, women can outperform men. But it's that right amount of encouragement at the right age is needed, I think, and that can actually do wonders. So
Even I feel so. I personally feel that we should, like, I'm pretty sure that Jordan Peterson praises his, because he is also a psychologist. I personally feel that we cannot really predict on the basis of Sweden, because I have personally seen that in India overall, only like men, women both, we have a huge aptitude for science. So if we were to promote free will and kind of encourage study for both women and men, then probably I think a lot more women would come out in STEM. Like, that's my personal feeling.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, that's what we're trying to actually also do through this program. 1,000 girls we've enrolled in this program this year. 10,000 we're going to do next year. And then 8 lakh girls we're going to enroll for coding in Delhi government schools. That's our aim. And, I will say that a lot of them might not go on to become coders or, machine learners. But then when they learn some part of technology, they might become better managers. They might become someone who solves problems on domestic violence with women using technology, who solves health problems like the COVID test kit, or one of them might develop a vaccine for any disease which might come out later. But I mean, we need to really encourage this. So that's what we are trying to do right now: bridge the gap and encourage more girls to take up science.
Yes, guys, bridging the gap is very important, and so is fixing the hiring pipeline. We'll read out a few audience comments, and I'll then ask a last maybe question on women empowerment only. So Sana, since we had asked her to kind of tell us what she does, and it's very interesting, so I would like all our audience members to kind of hear this out. So she leads an impact advisory group called the Social Corporate, where she helps NGOs and SMEs, which is small and medium enterprises, attain sustainability through product innovation and digital strategy.
Wow.
They also operate a digital initiative which connects NGOs with volunteers globally. And she has also posted the link in comments, guys, thesocialcorporate.com, so you can visit it. And Mr. Arindam Datta says thanks, probably for the answer to his question. So thank you, Mr. Arindam, for attending. Rakhi Mitra says great, and I know her. She's my mommy. So thank you, Rakhi Mami, for coming in and attending our session. And I would like to ask a last question, which is around a story which I had personally, seen in front of my eyes. So I was in 2018, I was in a village in Rajasthan when we were providing career guidance to high school students in that village. So it had a huge, female to male ratio. Like, so it was, more than one female to lesser than one man. So more females than men, basically. So they were in the audience, and I completed my career guidance session. So when I was asking them the careers that they would want to choose, so that I can tell them the degrees or the courses or maybe the opportunities that they can explore. So the girls started saying a variety of careers. Sir, writer के बारे में बताओ, author कैसे बनते हैं, poet कैसे बनते हैं. So one of them said films and cinema. And I wrote that down on the board. So then the girls started laughing. So मैंने कहा हंस क्यों रहे हो? So they are like कि नहीं सर मिटा दो. I said कि क्यों films and cinema मिटा दूं आपको? Films and cinema में नहीं जाना? Like will your village stop you from doing that? They are like नहीं सर वो पढ़ने से ही मना कर देंगे. I was a bit aback. I was taken a bit aback. So I asked them कि मतलब कब पढ़ने से मना करेंगे? डिग्री के टाइम पे या अभी स्कूल में ही? So they then told me कि सर हम तो 12th तक पहुंच गए, वही बहुत बड़ी बात है, अब इसके बाद तो शादी करेंगे. Now I am confused because मैं वहां पे career counseling के लिए गया हूँ. Now and this is something which I cannot solve in 1 or 2 sessions. This is what my thinking is. So let us say if I got 8 sessions with them or 24 sessions with them, how can I solve for this problem? Because I can give them courses, I can motivate them. My solution to this probably would have been that maybe letting them know more about their rights and their living their dreams so that they can go back and talk to their parents about this. But do you think their parents will agree if they go back and talk to their parents? What is the solution to this according to you?
I feel, Aditya, that's an important question you asked. That, if we tell them, of course, we tell them about their rights and everything, but that kind of brings in a resentment or a revolt. But we don't want that to happen within our, families, because then people like you will not be encouraged to enter that village or society again because you
Right.
bring that mindset. What you need to really do is maybe bring a skill set to those girls. So maybe, encourage them to learn soft skills, which can actually lead them to some kind of, employment opportunities while, they are, studying. Because one of the lacunas in our education system, especially in the primary education system, is we're not teaching skills actually, which will actually, empower them to say after 12th, what are they going to do after 12th. And if parents do not encourage them to do a graduation, even graduates also don't get really amazing jobs. So what is it that you can do? I think that's where skills like teaching them coding, teaching them some say nutrition skill also. If you teach them in school and they learn, and then they can become nutritionists, or say you teach them some kind of if they want to do pottery or whatsoever, you teach them skills in school so that they can pursue careers after that, and not be encouraged to drop out of school or just get married. Because once they have that, I think that's when you can actually encourage them to pursue education further. There may be basic skills like how to get a small job in a supermarket. How do you talk? How do you become a customer representative? So those kinds of skills I think we need to really encourage in schools in order to solve that problem. Otherwise, it is going to take a lot of time to solve it.
Right. Thank you so much for your insights, Rupinder. I'll probably use this up in my next few sessions. So yes, Samant, over to you. You have any questions or any ending statements?
Not really. Not necessarily questions. I think time भी बहुत हो चुका है. We have one comment by Anita ji, who says, due to lack of information, many ladies can't even think of many opportunities, career opportunities. So I guess that is one thing we are trying to break with our current program as well in ITS. I mean, while we are going to teach entrepreneurship over there, we are also trying to break the mindset that you don't have to necessarily stick to the 1 or 2 jobs that think of. I'm not even saying fields, I'm just saying couple of jobs. You don't have to stick to that. Based on your innovation, you can create your own job role essentially. I think that's it pretty much from the audience. So guys, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Thank you to the audience. Rupinder ji, just before we say goodbye to you, any closing words from your side?
Okay, so I would really say that since we're talking also about women empowerment and opportunities for women, that women shouldn't feel that there is something which they can't do, like me and Sain were talking. If they have that mindset that they can pursue anything, say politics, science, they can actually do it. First thing is having the bravery and resilience that yes, you can do it. And second thing is, I would also say that you should encourage fellow women or fellow girls who need your support as mentors, if you're there, so that we can have more women and more girls who can, Aditya tomorrow when he goes to some village, he does not face that problem because those girls are getting mentorship, or they're getting some skills. So build enterprises which can actually teach skills and also encourage such students, not only girls but boys also, from the rural background, who can be consumed in those enterprises, and we can make some kind of development or change happen at the ground. That's my advice.
Great. And one thing I would like to just not your comment, but the session we are doing every day. Like I asked Sanaji to put forth exactly what she does for her impact consultant. So the reason why I asked this key, obviously everybody is curious as to what she's doing, but also the small conversation where Sandeep ji asked her, "What is the name of your digital initiative?" and also getting all these different guests onto a podcast. तो रीज़न क्या है? एक तो कोरोना में है और कोई काम नहीं है, दैट्स वन रीज़न ऑब्वियसली. लेकिन उसके साथ व्हेन यू थिंक ऑफ दिस अनकन्वेंशनल लाइंस ऑफ करियर, कि आप सोशल डेवलपमेंट में जाना चाहते हो, या फिर यू वांट टू गेट इनटू टेली मार्केटिंग, और यू वांट टू गेट इनटू एक्टिंग और सिंगिंग एंड सो ऑन एंड सो फोर्थ, तो एक डायलेमा एक आता है सबके माइंड में, तो मैं किससे बात करूँ, किससे कनेक्ट करूँ, या फिर वेयर कैन आई फाइंड अ राइट गाइड, और एटलीस्ट समवन जो मेरे को कम से कम 1 नंबर तक तो गिनना सिखा दे, 2 से मैं अपना खुद गिन लूँ. तो आई थिंक दैट्स व्हाट वी आर ट्राइंग टू डू, एंड ऑल्सो इट्स गुड टू सी दैट पीपल इन द चैट आर ऑल्सो कॉन्वर्सिंग विथ ईच अदर, जानना चाहते कि ओके वेयर डू यू वर्क, एंड हर बार तो नहीं होता है, वी वॉन्ट इट टू हैपन एवरी डे, but then it does happen every now and then, and that's pretty great to see. And that's the purpose of our podcast. खुद का back पे pat करना is one thing, but also we are trying to reach out to people who eventually can probably connect with us, and we'll connect to the better experts जो कि आपको एक दिशा दिखा सके. That's being the purpose. With that being said, एक अच्छे नोट पे thank you audience for all your comments, questions and insights. Mr. Sen and Aditya, thank you for being with us. And of course, Rupinder ji, thank you so much for taking time and being with us.
Well,
Guys,
I really want to thank Probano for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to share this and encourage people, and especially burst the myth around social development and social enterprises and social sector. And please feel free to connect, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Sain. Thank you, Aditya. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Right. अगर किसी को भी रुपिंदर मैम से कनेक्ट करना है, you can send us a private message. We'll forward the details to you, and you can talk to her. Absolutely. With that, guys, stay indoors, wash your hands, stay safe. We'll meet you tomorrow, same time, 6 p.m. on Facebook. Like and follow our page and turn on post notifications to get notified when we do go live. Take care and bye-bye. See you tomorrow.